Bookaholics is a safe place for reading junkies who obsess over books, authors, bookstores, book news, and book trivia. We'll nerd out with book reviews, author interviews, our habit, and other bookish things. Here is your host, Deirdre Pippins.
Hey Bookaholics, today we're talking to Liz Alterman, who is a very versatile writer. She's going to tell you about how she got sacked and sad sacked, her memoir, and she's got a nice adult contemporary suspense novel out that came out in July. Let's talk to Liz Alterman after this. Good morning, Liz. How you doing?
I'm good, Deirdre. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, no problem. I am doing great. And I just love starting off my week talking to authors. It's just one of my favorite things to do. So let's just go ahead and dive right into your story.
Thank you.
So you've written books, you've written a variety of books. But before we talk about your books, how did you become a writer? How did you get into this space? Because you weren't in the writing space, you were in media.
Absolutely, yes. Well, thanks for asking. I have to say I grew up reading. One of my earliest memories is of my mom reading to me on the couch growing up, and going to the library was always like such a special outing for me.
Yes.
So it was something that I always wanted to do, was to write a book, but it sort of seemed like a lofty goal. Like, would I really have the time or discipline to see it through? And so, as you mentioned, I've had a variety of careers. I've worked in finance and then in journalism. And then I was laid off in 2014. And that sort of gave me, I guess, whether I wanted it or not, more free time than I'd ever had before. So I ended up taking a workshop on memoir writing, and it came about because I'd been offered a freelance assignment interviewing the founder of a local writers' school. So one of the questions I asked her was, what's your most popular class? What do people really enjoy taking, or what's full every semester? And she said, our memoir writing. Everyone feels they have a story to tell. So I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And at the same time, so just to go back a little bit, when I lost my job, my husband had lost his job 6 weeks prior. So we were unemployed together. And to sort of keep my sanity, I started a blog where I kind of was like making fun of the job interview process, because my husband had been at his position for 18 years. He was completely, I don't want to say blindsided, but he was caught off guard, and he had not been out there job hunting in close to 2 decades. So when he would pull up applications and they would say things like, what's your personal theme song? Or tell us how you would change our company in 160 characters. Like I would just watch him sort of deflate and hang his head like, is this for real? Are they kidding? Yeah. And so I started a blog about, what a crazy thing it is to try to reinvent yourself at midlife. And from there, I guess once I interviewed the founder of that writer's school, and she said our memoir classes are our most popular, I thought, you know what, maybe I could write about this crazy time in our lives that the two of us are both out of work and, kind of course, getting on each other's nerves the more time we spend together. As the bills pile up and we're both getting more and more rejections, or we'd get an interview and then it would be like immediately, oh, we found a more qualified candidate. Sorry, see you later. So from there, I took these workshops as a way to see if there was something there, if I could really kind of go the distance and write a book. And that, I was able to complete it. And then, of course, that was a whole other journey of getting an agent and getting more rejections. But from there, I kind of thought, okay, once you can complete one thing, maybe I could write another. So then I sort of moved into fiction from there.
Well, now the title of that book about your unemployment journey is called Sad Sacked, right?
Exactly, yes.
I love that title. I love that title. I'm going
Oh,
to digress a little bit. I think I remember my parents were of an older generation. So I was really raised by much older people that really could have been age-wise my grandparents. So, but there was I think a cartoon in their day called Sad Sack or there was a character named Sad Sack.
oh, how
And
funny.
when I read that title, I was like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of this character that my parents used to talk about. So,
Oh,
but yeah,
that's
that's a
funny.
great title, Sad Sack. That just kind of encapsulates the whole unemployment thing.
Thank you. Yes, it was, I mean, I'm glad that you think that because it is kind of, I tried to approach it with humor, even though it was kind of a dark time, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's
absolutely.
dark. It's dark when no money is coming in the house, and
Exactly.
people quickly become otherworldly when there's no money there, you
Yes.
know,
And
and for both of you to be sacked, you know, and then too, as you were speaking about your husband, that whole journey, you know, I was always accustomed to you could go to a place and apply in person. The people see your face, they see your smile, they say, oh,
exactly.
this looks like a nice girl, and you fill out your application. And a lot of times I got jobs just because
I'm
I was
sure.
a nice girl, or I appeared to
Right.
be a very nice girl, and you know,
Right,
people
and
were
they could see your bubbly energy, and they think that's someone I want representing my company, but yes, now you're behind a computer screen, and these
yeah,
robots are filtering you out based on
yeah,
keywords, and you're right, it's a whole
yeah.
different world.
Yeah, and I can see how frustrating that was to your husband because it sounds like he was probably part of the same group like I was that, you know, you show up and you fill out an application or something like that, or you got just a little bit more personal interaction. And you get on these computers, like you said, and it's like, oh, sorry, we found a more qualified candidate. Well, how? How in the world? You never saw them.
Exactly, you're right, yes. It
So
is,
yeah,
it's daunting.
that's definitely a book that people, you know, should read before you might get sacked. But yeah, to see the, you know, that whole journey. Now you guys both, you of course became a writer, but both of you came out of that whole thing.
We did, yes, thankfully. I mean, it took a while, and I have to say from there, I accepted a job mainly because we needed healthcare and money coming
Yeah.
in, as you say, but the one I took wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, and so I
Yeah.
cover that in the book as well, and
Mhm.
yeah, and just definitely how our approaches were different. Like you say, I think my husband was used to sort of, well, do you have a connection? Can you
Yes.
network your way into a position?
Yes.
And I was kind of like, just keep sending resumes. And
Right.
so that was definitely creating a lot of stress. At the
Right.
same time, as you say, if somebody had just said to us in a year and a half, you'll both be employed again, I think we could have said like, okay,
Yes.
take a breath and cope. But when you just don't know when that end is coming and you think, we have 3 kids, we should be planning ahead. Do we sell? Do we put our home on the market and try to move to a less expensive area?
Right.
What's next? And I think that's this. And then if you take a full-time job that's outside your field or not really what you want to do, that cuts into your time when you could be looking or networking or finding what
Right.
is a good match. So you're
Right.
kind of always weighing the benefits versus those disadvantages of, what is it going to cost me in the long run? So
Right.
so hard.
Exactly, exactly. Well, you know, I'll say two more things about the whole unemployment journey. One of the things I found out at one point in time is that companies could tell you were older by your email address.
Yes.
And I read an article like that, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" You know, so
Mhm.
they were like, they know if a person had an AOL address, they knew
Absolutely.
they were old. So they were, you know, so if you had that, you were going to be tossed away anyway. Okay. The other
Exactly.
thing is that I didn't realize at the time that, you know, people have all these new funky looking resumes these
Yeah.
days. They don't have just the regular, you know, and they can tell from that, oh yeah, we don't want that person there. They're from another generation or they're old. But I found that's terrible. That's age discrimination. But yeah, I found out those two things quite a while ago myself at a time when I was trying to get a job a very long time ago. But yeah, that's the whole thing.
Those are great points too, because it's so true. When I lost my job, a much younger coworker was also caught in the same layoff group. Yes. And so she had sent me her resume and just said, would you proofread it? Because we were all trying to help each other. And you're so right. I mean, hers, it was like red, it was brown, it was indented. It was like the Jetsons resume compared to my old lady, like bullet points or whatever. And I just thought, wow, if this is who I'm competing with, I'm dead in the water. Like, I really need to step it up, because hers was a totally different thing, as you say. So that's really important for anyone listening who's job hunting. Yes, you want to keep current with the trends.
Exactly. But yeah, I remember learning that and my mind was blown, but got past all of that. And thank goodness I don't have to do any of that anymore. But anyway.
Good for you. Yes.
Well, now, so let's go on to your writing journey. So you got that job that was not really what it was termed to be. And you took that memoir class. So how did you transition over to young adult fiction?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. I guess my memoir was not selling, and people, it was kind of, I guess it was just all about timing and luck. And I had an agent and she was lovely and she tried very hard, but we would get rejections that said, the economy is booming. This was, let's say, in like 2017, 2018, and people would say, anyone who wants a job could have a job. There's no market. Or that's a nice story, but I don't know how to break it out. Or I would hear, I'm not a Real Housewife. I don't have a platform. I'm not big enough. Nobody cares about this story. So that was hard to hear. So then I thought, okay, what else is popular? What am I seeing out there? And I have 3 sons who unfortunately are reluctant readers much of the time. So which kills me, because if somebody said to me, go sit for an hour and read a book, it would feel like a gift. So I thought, what if I wrote something in the young adult space? And what if I felt to capture their attention, it would need to have a suspenseful element. So that's where I started. And my middle son, who's probably the most reluctant reader, I would give him a chapter at a time. And he would, when he would come to the end, he would say, all right, is there more? What happens next? And so it was, that kind of kept me going. And, but so I got a different agent for that book. And then again, it didn't sell. I got a lot of nice, sort of mixed feedback, which is difficult for a reader. I would have people say, I love the character, but the pacing just wasn't right for me. Or then I would have someone else say, I loved the pacing, but I didn't connect to the character. And so it's kind of like, what do you do with that feedback? So I began sending it out on my own to places that didn't require an agent. And I got one, Between the Lines Press, and they've been wonderful to work with. So it's under their Willow River Press imprint. And they've been so supportive. We went back and forth on the cover design. They said, we want to make sure you're happy with it. And it's been a really wonderful experience to work with them. They're really just responsive and supportive. So I feel lucky that it found a home. And then so it's been in paperback and ebook. And then this October, I sold it to Blackstone Audio, so it'll come out right before Halloween as an audiobook.
Right. Okay. Blackstone Audio. Where's Blackstone Audio out of? Is that out of somewhere out west?
Yeah, it's Portland, Oregon. So
you know what? I believe I've interviewed. Do you know Rick Bleiweiss?
I don't, but the name is familiar.
I thought he has something to do with that company. I'll go back and see if that's correct, and maybe connect both of you.
Oh, thank you. I would love that.
Yeah, I think that's familiar. I believe I've interviewed someone from that company, and I think it
That's
was
funny. Yeah, it's such a small world in publishing. Kind of once you meet someone, it's like you either know someone in common or you've been at in the same place at the same time. It's funny.
yeah. Yes, yes, yes. So now the name of this book that you're talking about that you just sold to Blackstone Audio is the one where I saw the young man with the hoodie
Yes,
overhead. And
he'll
what's
be
the name of
waiting.
that?
He'll be waiting.
He'll Be Waiting.
Yes.
Ooh, that sounds crazy. So that's re-release for Halloween.
Right. It'll be released on as an audiobook on October 25th.
Okay, okay. Audiobook October 25th. I'm jotting this down because I might
Thank you.
go into there.
Oh,
Now,
thank you.
let's fast forward to the book that you just released this past July.
Yes, thank you. That one's called The Perfect Neighborhood, and that's an adult domestic suspense novel. And
Okay, so that one's not a YA. I thought that was a YA also.
no, it's
Okay,
an adult.
okay, okay. Because I was like, wow, this is really heavy for a teen.
It's so funny. No, thankfully, no, I probably wouldn't recommend it although there is one point of view that is told from a teenager's perspective. It's the babysitter who was supposed to be at the home when the little boy who goes missing in the story, when he doesn't show up, she's late to his house. So we get her perspective throughout the story. So there is one character who I guess you would put in almost a YA category.
Right, got you. Okay, so set the tone for this new book.
Okay, thank you. Well, it begins with there's a lot of gossip in this small sort of upscale community called Oak Hill.
Mhm.
And it starts off where you hear a little bit about this one resident, Allison Langley, who is a model and actress. And she leaves her husband, who's a former rock star, in the middle of the night. And so for months, the residents kind of speculate what went wrong. They seemed like this golden couple. You know, if they can't make it, who among us can? This is crazy.
Right,
And
right.
then the gossip sort of grinds to a halt when this almost 6-year-old boy goes missing on his walk home from kindergarten. And it sort of gets the neighbors, I wouldn't say initially turning against each other, but definitely speculating. Who could it be? Is it a stranger? Is it someone we know? And then I guess it begins in the point of view of the mom of the missing boy. And she has recently gone back to work. So she sort of blames herself. You know, if she were there waiting for him, like all these other parents, would that have happened? And she has a kind of a lot of tension in her own marriage. And part of that is that she didn't want her son walking home. He was supposed to walk home from school with a buddy, but that
Right.
day the other boy has a dentist appointment. And so it's just 3 blocks that he's supposed to walk home
Right.
alone, but he doesn't make it that day.
Oh my goodness, that is just terrifying, first of
Right.
all, to think about, and then a lot of things were going through my mind as you were describing this, because I can kind of see if you live in an enclave, and if in that type of enclave where people are trying to impress each other or, whatever, and people have opinions, deep opinions of people without really knowing them, that
Exactly.
get sort of a mob mentality going when something goes wrong.
Absolutely.
And I can just easily see something like that happening. And then people thinking, well, that mom, she wasn't very much,
Yeah,
they're not that much, they're careless or whatever. Things
exactly.
can build up to where people, become suspicious and all of these things. So yeah, that sounds very, very good.
Oh,
Now,
thank you.
looking across your lot of work, so you've got a memoir, you've got YA, and you've got adult contemporary suspense. So how is it that you're able to juggle all these genres? And do you plan on going forward in focusing on just one genre?
Ooh, thanks for asking. That's a great question. I think I've been lucky that I kind of have been just following the story that comes to me or the idea that I'm most interested in. So I think at the time when I wrote the memoir, I would joke that writing that blog and writing that memoir was kind of cheaper than a therapist copay. It was like very healing or cathartic for me to kind of write it down and almost like make fun of what was happening to us. Like how, how has this how have we both been, I could see if one of us was laid off and then got a job and then the other laid off. But for the two of us to kind of be staring at each other, like, what do we do next? It just seemed like there was almost a comical element of like, how did this happen? I mean, scary, but so I went with that. And then I think the YA was kind of almost based on an idea that a friend had told me a story when I was in college. And it had to do with her doing a favor for someone else and how that favor kind of spiraled out of control. And so I guess that concept of sort of the ripple effect of like, I wanted to do one good thing and it went completely awry. That idea had kind of stayed with me. And I thought like, what could you do just with that concept? And so I sort of built that from there. And then for The Perfect Neighborhood, that idea kind of came to me in a dream. And I had the beginning and the ending, but not the middle. And so I kind of hesitated. It was funny. I had told my husband when I woke up, I just had this dream and it was so vivid. And I gave him the plot line. He was like, oh, that would never work. And I know. So I waited for months, like hoping another idea might come to me, and nothing did. But meanwhile, as I'd be, cooking dinner, washing the dishes, this kind of narrative was in the back of my head. And it was really the only idea at the time that I had. So after about 6 months, I sat down and I said, you know what, I'm just going to take all this stuff that's been in my head and try to write it down. And once I did, it was just kind of, it was certainly wasn't perfect or pretty or organized, but I thought, you know what, there's something here and I need to see it through. So I think I kind of am guided by like, what's an idea that I feel that I could flesh out and make larger. And I feel like I have to have a passion for it, because I'll have people, I'm sure people probably come to you all the time with, I have an idea for your podcast, or I have an idea for this. And half the time it's wonderful. And half the time you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm feeling that. And so I'll have people will come up to me all the time, or my husband will have these kind of almost like supernatural ideas, and I'll think like, I'm not really a sci-fi gal, but not that there's anything wrong with that. My brain just doesn't work like that. But so I feel like I'm trying to just kind of, for lack of a better word, like honor the idea that comes to me. So at the moment, I've been trying to flesh out a proposal for another nonfiction piece that would sort of be a collection of related essays about grief and about, so my dad passed away May of 2021. And I guess it's, my family, my brothers, my mom and I, we live within, I guess, about an hour, from the furthest one of us. And so it's kind of all about different things that have happened along the way. Like my mom, she, unfortunately, she was obviously sad, but then she seemed to be stuck in the anger phase of grief, where she was very mad at people for not properly maintaining the cemetery plot. And that became like an ongoing thing. And then she was proud of the eulogies my brothers gave. So next thing, she's mailing these eulogies all over to friends. And when friends aren't calling immediately to say, I loved these eulogies, like then she was upset about that. And I was joking with my brothers saying, your eulogies are soon going to be viewed more than a Kardashian sex tape. And my brothers are saying like, she's got to stop with this. Nobody they heard it. They don't need a copy of this. But so I feel like amid the sadness, there has been different parts of humor. And then also my oldest son went off to college. So I feel like I'm in the middle, like that sandwich generation of trying to help my mom, help my kids. And it's kind of like, where do you find the time for yourself, or, just sort of grieve and honor the memory of the person that you lost. And I think coming out of COVID too, so many people are in that difficult spot of having lost a loved one. Yeah. We're in a world that doesn't really stop for grief. So you kind of just keep moving forward. And so it's a little bit about that.
Wow. I will tell you, Liz, that almost made me cry. I
I'm
felt
sorry.
a lump in my throat and tears started to well up in my eyes. But you're so right. And I think that is as far as business is concerned, I think that would be a great connector for a lot of people, because, well, first of all, grief happens. It's going to happen whether we had COVID or not. But
Yes,
to throw in COVID into that, that escalated it a lot. We had that kind of like a whole communal type of grief thing going
exactly.
on, and a lot of people do not know how to handle grief. It depends on who it is that passes away. Then, like
Exactly.
you said, that once that person's is a void in everybody's life, then it's kind of like, who steps up? Not to take that person's
Exactly.
place, but there's a gap. So then that void has to be sort of filled. It will never be 100% filled, but
Right.
it's interesting to see who's going to come to the fore and take on leadership or take on whatever that person was doing, and it's a lot within the grieving process. And like you said, your mother in her particular case was stuck on anger.
Absolutely.
She probably thought it was a good thing, that she was doing a good thing, and she was celebrating her sons and so proud of them and sending all of those off. And then, and then for people not to read them. And, some people on the other side, depending on how they think and feel about grief, are like, why is she sending us
Abs
this?
Absolutely, and I think that was my brother's point, and then with her anger toward the way the cemetery was not maintaining my dad's plot, my dad had always been out there, like, we didn't have a ton of property, but he was out there, reseeding the lawn and
Yeah.
fertilizing and weeding, and so when this was not being maintained, she would say, like, "Oh, your father would be so upset if he could see this," and I was gonna say, "Well, I think he'd be upset because he'd be seeing his own burial plot,"
Right. Exactly.
and then I would try to help by stepping in, and I called the cemetery and I would say, my mom is upset. Is there anything we can do? Can we go over and plant grass? So then I told her, and then she was, oh, you shouldn't have interfered. It was fine. And I said, I've just listened to weeks of this. And so it's kind of, it's like you're not always kind of doing the wrong thing when
Yeah.
you're with somebody who, is in sort of a delicate state. And so
Exactly.
we were trying to help. And then it was funny because on the cemetery's end, the woman I spoke with said, well, it's not our fault. We've had so much sunshine and so much rain. How
Yeah.
could grass grow? And I'm saying, I think sunshine and rain are exactly what you need to grow grass.
Right.
But I'm no gardener. But it was just, it was kind of funny. At different turns, we would try to help, as you're saying, to step in and kind of fill that void, or just every person take an angle to be supportive.
Right.
And when it's just not helping, it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard on everyone.
Well, first, I would like to extend my condolences
Oh, thank
to
you. You're
you
so
and your
sweet.
family, because it's not to extend that just in the immediate, because like grieving is a process. And, I understand. I can totally empathize of where your family is right now. I lost my father in 1999 and
Oh, I'm
my mother
sorry.
in 1996. So
Oh,
my parents never saw the full development of my whole adult life with my
oh,
husband and my children, you know.
sure.
So, you know,
I'm
so I
sorry.
totally understand where you guys are. And that's why I was able to relate and talk about the void and people filling in the void and trying.
Right. You
And
absolutely know. You've been there, and I'm sorry for your
yeah,
loss. Lost
yeah.
friends. Oh,
Well, I think this book, I've been seeing more about grief. People are approaching that more. And I think the more we have about the approach of grief and how different people are working through grief, we need it.
oh,
We
good.
absolutely need it. I say I congratulate you already on going on that journey.
Oh, thank you.
I would love to see that nonfiction piece from you, you know.
Thank you.
I'm in full support. So whenever you got that ready, you can always come back on and we can always talk
Oh,
about it, because
thank
I do a mental health series. I did a mental health series in the month of May, and that helped people so much. It was different people focused on different aspects of mental health. and I never did have a person to talk about grief.
Oh.
That's one of the that's a temporary mental health issue. Grief is. I consider.
Absolutely. Yes, I saw on your Instagram, it looked like you did some wonderful work on mental health. And I feel that's more important now than ever. And
Yes.
similar to grief, I think the stigma is sort of fading away and people are less afraid to say, you know what, I'm not doing great. Like, I'm not going to put on that happy face and
Exactly.
pretend anymore, and I
Right.
think as they do that, more and more people feel comfortable, like, I'm experiencing the same thing. And so
Right.
it sort of expands and helps everyone. So that's wonderful that you
Yes.
did that.
Yes, yes. And so from time to time, I will have people that's focused on mental health come back on, that's written books and all of these type of things. People just need help. They just need
Absolutely.
help. And for those who's willing to give of their heart and mind to help others, I want to showcase them.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think it makes everyone feel less alone, that
Yes.
you're not just struggling, on your own, or that what you're feeling isn't unreasonable or, irrational, that it's not uncommon.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I just tell you, I definitely look forward to
Oh, thank
more
you.
from you, and I can't wait to read The Perfect Neighborhood. I think that just sounds
Oh,
great.
thank you, Deirdre. I'll send you a copy. Please send me your address and I'll get
Yeah.
that out to you.
Yes, yay. I will send that to you right after this interview. That sounds great. Well, tell us, Liz, how our listeners, my listeners, can connect with you after this interview. What's your social media handles, websites?
Oh, thank you. It's pretty straightforward. I'm on Instagram and Twitter as @LizAlterman. And then my website is lizalterman.com. And I'm also happy if anyone wants to reach out to me through that form or through social media. I'm happy to Zoom or Skype into book clubs if anyone chooses any one of my works. My mom's a big coupon lady, so I like to always say it's free of charge. I'm not charging anyone. I'm just grateful for their support. So if anyone's interested in that, I'm actually doing, I guess, my first book club appearance via Zoom this Thursday. So I'm crossing my fingers. I know you hear different things that, authors will say. I sat down at a book club meeting and a member didn't know I was the author. And they said, oh, I really didn't like this month's pick. So I'm crossing my fingers that I don't have that experience, but I know it's out there. So I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, I would announce, I'm the author of the book.
Right, exactly. And then let them kind of absorb that, right?
Wow. Well, I wish you well with that. I think it will be just fine. And once you get started with one, you'll have one after the other. I think it'll be great.
I hope so, because I love, connecting with readers and just getting their feedback on what they liked and, what they expected to happen, what maybe if they saw the ending coming, if they didn't. It's so interesting.
Yes, most definitely. Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to have all of your contact information that you just named in the podcast show notes, as well as in the description box on the YouTube channel. Liz, we wish you well, and so glad to have you here today.
Oh, you too, Deirdre. Thanks again for your time. It was a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you so much.